He never once thought of praying to God. When my wife had eclampsia and almost died in the hospital when our daughter was born, it was a horribly traumatic moment. It was scary. Neither of us thought. In fact, she basically died and didn't know it. But they got there in time to bring her back. Neither of us thought of invoking the power of some deity outside the universe. We thought of invoking the best medical care we could get in the Midwest, which we did. If a chaplain had come in our room, her blood pressure would have gone up. There's no way she'd respect. So your whole scenario is patently false. Many people, I can tell you story after story, and I won't belabor you tonight, but it's a myth that there are no atheists in foxholes. There have been many atheists in foxholes who are not indoctrinated ahead of time to imagine that there's some power outside the universe that you can invoke. Believers will invoke their God. Muslims will pray to Allah. Catholics will pray to Mary or some saint. And whatever your culture is, atheists don't pray to anyone. We might jokingly say, "Oh my God," which doesn't really mean anything. But so I answer your question directly by saying that the premise of your question is simply flat out false. We have 1 minute to reply.
Let's follow in the same vein. Are there any real atheists? I think Mr. Barker here is proof that there isn't. Here's a man dedicating his life to proving that somebody doesn't exist. Could this be another way of dealing with sin, with guilt? It could be. He will say, of course, no way. He may be insulted that I suggest that. He would be insulted. He's making a joke of it now, good, and you all laughing. But really, in reality, 25 years is not a joke. We understand what the crowd responds to. In effect, Mr. Barker is dealing with the same thing that Hindus deal with, that Catholics deal with. How do you solve the sin problem? And one of the ways to solve it is it says it doesn't exist. It's all an imagination. So in fact, I haven't seen any research from Foxhole, so I have nothing to say about that. But it's a possible, it is a logical thought that could be behind what Dan Barker is doing. Because I can't imagine spending my life on proving something that I believe is not.
So graceful. There you go.
I have a question for Peter Youngren. Can you please tell us more about Dawkins and his book?
I think that was a planted question.
First of all, there's nothing personal in this. I hope any intensity in the discussion is just the nature. If you feel passionate about something, and I think both Dan and I agree with that. I've seen Richard Dawkins on the television show. Actually, my son Peter Carl spent 25 minutes with Richard Dawkins in Oxford. He studies at Oxford. I feel that Dawkins is very loud. He doesn't hear any answers. Answers are provided. He just shouts back. Now, one particular quote that turned me off as I was about to read his book is this. This is what Dawkins says about Charles Darwin and the book, The Origin of the Species. Dawkins says, Darwin devoted one brief chapter to the difficulties with his theory of evolution. It is fair to say that this chapter anticipates and disposed every one of the alleged difficulties that have since been proposed about the theory of evolution. To me, that is the height of ignorance. First of all, the fact is now, Darwin did not devote one chapter to the difficulties of his theories. He devoted 4 chapters to it. Secondly, how could Darwin have dealt with all the difficulties with evolution that would come? He didn't know the role of mutation. He didn't know the complexity of the molecules. He didn't understand genetic science. He never heard of Albert Einstein. How could he possibly give an intelligent rebuttal before any of these things? He didn't know that your human cell, 3 billion components with 75 trillion cells. He didn't know any of these facts. So what it seems like, Dawkins doesn't want to face the facts. He wanted to sweep it under the carpet with one sentence, and I find him doing that a lot. And so as popular as he is, the New York bestseller list and all, I have lots of good books at that table I would recommend. Thank you. Did I go over time? You know that? Oh, I thought you said that was... okay, sorry, you got to speak up there. Because I hurried there now. And so I find that Dawkins in that area, he just doesn't address anything. Doesn't matter what is said, he just shouts over it. That's what I saw him do on television. That's what he's doing in his book. This is not a scholarly way to express yourself. To just make a sweeping statement. Darwin answered all the opposing views. Nothing more to be said. Because that's what he says in his book. It's not even, there's no logic to it. And so I don't have time to read someone like that. I've read enough atheist books. I've read Hitchens, God is Not Great. I've read Sam Harris. So don't worry, I've read atheist books, and I get more convinced of Jesus the more I read them. Our message is fabulous, Dan. It's brilliant. No. But it really is.
And to that I say no thanks. Many of us are better than that. We've risen above this idea of sin. Thanks but no thanks. And I lived it, and I know what you're preaching because I used to preach that, in this appealing to the heart and the spirit and the emotions and all that. And it's very effective, and good preachers know how to do that. And you're a good preacher. But Dawkins did not say Darwin solved all the problems. What Dawkins was saying was that, to Darwin's credit, he did not run from the problems. Darwin said, look at the human eye. How could we imagine it? And you hear a lot of, you're not one of these Christians, but you hear a lot of Christians quoting that verse saying, see, Darwin could not solve the problem of the complexity of the human eye. But actually Darwin went on from there. If you read the rest of the passage, if you're honest, you'll see that he did deal with them and anticipated solutions. Part of his genius was that even today, scientists have not solved all the problems of evolution. So there's no way Dawkins would have pretended that Charles Darwin 150 years ago, next year is the 150th anniversary of the book, that he would have solved all the problems. He was crediting Darwin with being honest enough to admit that there are problems, and then he dealt with them in his way, in his own time, even before he knew anything about Mendel, as you point out. So that is an unfair accusation of Dawkins.